Hi, Racing Series Tutorials. Today, let's see where I am. I have a track and I have a car. And the car, I could drive it around the track with the camera following the car. Oh, this is great. But what racing game is it that has no other cars to race against? Somehow we're going to have to make some other cars to race against in this game. So, while I can drive a car and see where the track is and go around it by turning left and right, how can I make an AI-controlled car do the same? Well, I've thought about it and I've come up with an idea. What I have to do is basically I have to mark out some points along the track for an AI car to follow. So that's what this tutorial is going to be about today, is making an AI path. So first thing I'll do is I'll add a empty game object, and I could reset its location to the center. And I'll call this game object checkpoints. Enter. Okay. And to this game object, what I'm going to add are a bunch of points along the track. So let's see. I'll have to add another object. This time I will add a quad, which is a wall, which I'll use as a wall. And the quad, I'm going to call this wall. And there'll be a bunch of walls in the scene, so I'll name the first one wall 0. And let's just move it over here where I could see it on track. And also I'm going to give it a little gizmo icon, a yellow dot, so I could see it in design mode. Let's just make sure the gizmos are sized up. Okay, so should be able to zoom into the wall. Okay, and then oh no, that's the forward. Let's just turn the angle a little bit. There we go, and pull it up out of the ground. There you go. Okay, so we have the gizmo. That's one of my points. And the wall does have a mesh renderer, so I could just see the wall a little bit. Let me make size 3. All right. So what I want from this is the collider, really. I don't want it to render anything, so I'm going to take off that. And I could probably even remove that component. All right, so for each of my checkpoints, I'm going to have a little wall that the car is going to be able to detect when it goes through. So I guess I can see these walls a little better. Probably make them a little higher. There, that's a wall. And I probably now could go around, oops, and take this object, turn it into a prefab. Okay, so the wall, I'll turn it into a prefab here. So here we have my first one, and then I'll use Control D to make a copy, and I'll make a second. Control D, and I'll make a third. So making these dots go along the path here, but I'd like them in the scene view at least to show a line connecting so I can see how smooth I'm making my path. So I'm going to go on checkpoints and I'm going to add a script here so it could draw some stuff for me. And I'm going to call this script checkpoints, add a new script. I'll call it my checkpoint connector. Go ahead, add that. Now I'll double click to open it. In Visual Studio. And I'll start typing dots to connect the walls with a line. Oh, I like lining up my stuff. And let's see, start off with, I guess I want a variable to say how big to make the wall. I was playing around with that. New vector 3, and by default, I guess I will say the wall is 15 by 2 by 1. The thickness is 1. Okay. That will be my wall size, and I have some squigglies because I have a syntax error. And then I'll have a function to draw in the scene view. I have to use the event of onDrawGizmos. Okay, so onDrawGizmos will draw stuff like, in the scene view, but not in the game view. And where am I? Here I am. And let's see, so in order to start drawing lines between dots, I'll need at least 2 lines. So I need at least 2, right? So if this dot transform dot child count is less than 2, then I could just return and not draw any lines. So here's a checkpoint. So that's what my checkpoint connector script is connected to. That's the this. And these are the children, like how many dots are currently there. So right now I have 3 of them. So the check here is just to make sure that I have at least 2 dots, otherwise I have nothing to draw a line between. So now I will draw lines from the current to the next dot with a loop for int I equals 0 to I less than this dot transform dot child count. It's how many dots are there, how many children objects, and then plus plus to loop through. So I'll set the color for the gizmo. Gizmos dot color equals yellow. So it matches the color of the graphic icon, except I have to use color dot yellow. Okay. And then gizmos dot, I'm going to want to draw a line. See, there's all those functions there. I want to use line. And that's going to need a start point and an end point. So for the from point, I'll use the child. This dot transform dot get child at I, the child I'm at, dot position to the next child. This dot transform dot get child at I plus 1 dot position. Okay, so that should draw a line from this point to this point, and then on the next loop, this point to this point. Okay. All right, so we got that. And just when we get to, we can't do this on the last point because there'll be no next point. So I'll say only go up to child count minus 1. All right, and then we just have to draw a line from the very last dot to the first. Line last to first. So I have to, let me see, int. I need the index of the last, which would be this dot transform dot child count minus 1 would be the index of the last child point. And I'll use a different color so we can tell where the looping starts. And I'll set the color here to equal color.red for these lines, for this last line. And then I'll say gizmos dot, again, draw a line from the last point, transform dot get child at idx last position, comma, to what? To the first point. This dot transform dot get child at the first point is 0, because in C#, all the arrays, they start at 0, not at a 1. And position, ding dong. Okay. There, that should draw the lines. So let's see, with this here, onDrawGizmos, there's a little star there, let me do a save. And then let me go back here, and it's processing. And bam, there, we got lines being drawn. Funny thing is, it looks like I have a yellow line and a red line being drawn from first to the end. I think that's what's happening. Because if I move this, yeah, there you go. first to the end. So now I'm going to have lines being drawn as I put these checkpoints. Now let me keep on making these checkpoints go around the track. Control D, move the copy, Control D, move the copy, Control D. Make sure I have a nice smooth yellow line going through everything here around the curves. Control D. And I guess the more dots I put, the closer the dots are. I guess the better it is for the AI cars to follow. But something like this looks good enough, especially if I'm going around a curve. That's where I want to get like the dots a little bit closer together. If I'm going in a straightaway and there's not that much change to happen, I guess I don't have to worry about how close the dots are that much. I mean, it's just basically go straight car, go straight. And here's another curve coming up, so I'll probably fill it with more dots. Then we come out of turn, the dots come apart. Definitely want a dot right here. And what's coming up ahead here? Looks like you got a big fat turn up there. Control D, Control D. And now we got a turn. So let's do this. A lot of these. Try to keep the dots in the middle. Almost like if you had a road, it's literally like the yellow line in the center of a road that I'm trying to draw out with these dots. And remember, the reason it's drawing a line between each of the yellow dots is because of the script that we just added. Excuse me. Woo! Control D. And then you can see the red line's bringing us back to make a loop. So to get close to that, and there we go. We have the yellow lines going around. Each point is marked with a dot, and they're all part of checkpoints. Now I'm going to just go back to select my checkpoints thing, and these little walls, I have to angle them so that they kind of face the road instead of just all facing the same way. So that would be very tedious if I do that myself, but we're programmers, so we're going to use code to do it. So I think I will do it in my checkpoint script here. So what I'm going to do is go back to the script, and in the script I'm going to look at adding another function, and this new function I'm going to add is going to be something that will angle each of the walls. So I'll call it public void angle checkpoint walls. Okay. Naming the function public because I plan to call it from the inspector by adding a button in the inspector window. But this function will angle each of the walls, so it's going to have to loop through each of the walls. So for int I equals 0 to I less than this dot transform dot child count again, I plus plus. So that will give me each of these child objects to checkpoints. And what do I have to do first? I have to figure out what my current wall is to my next wall, and I'm going to have a wall angle to look at the next point. All right, so for each, let's look over here for each point. This wall right now seems to be facing like this way. This wall's facing this way, but what I really want is for this wall, instead of facing this way, I want this wall over here to face the next point. So in code, I could do that by using look at. So I just have to know the current point and the next point to look at. So I'm going to store a value for let me just get the value for the current when I find it and store it there. And I'm going to have a variable to store the variable for the next and store it in a variable there. So first I have to say if I is less than this dot transform dot, oh, you know what? I could do a loop like I did over here. Go up to transform I dot child count. So if I is less than the child count minus 1, then my current equals this dot transform dot get child at I. I was just thinking I'll do the loop like I did this one. I did all the ones in the middle and then the last to the first. So over here, I'll do all the ones in the middle. So I'll make this a -1 to stop. And then I don't have to do this if. And then my current will equal this dot transform dot get child at I. Sorry guys, I typed something that I am now going to erase. And then my next is going to equal this dot transform dot get child at I +1. This is what I really want to put. Okay, so I had the first and next, and now I just have to angle the wall, angle current wall. So current dot look at next, and that will just angle the wall to look at the next wall. And the other thing, I had this value over here to say the size of the wall, since I made the size of the wall a variable in my script for how wide it should be, because maybe I have some tracks where it's narrow, some tracks where it's wide. So I just had that like a variable in the script in the inspector window. So now if I go to the code and I'll just look over here, I could also set the size of the wall here. So current dot local scale is what I'll use to scale the wall, and I'll scale will be equal to the wall scale, wall size. That was the variable in the inspector over here, the public variable. So this function should be able to go through all the points and size and angle each of the walls so that the walls point at each other. But there's nothing right now that's calling that function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make something called an editor script. So an editor script will add a button here for me into this script panel. And then when I press the button, it will size the walls for me. And even when we're in design time, I don't have to wait for runtime. So when I make an editor script, I need to make an editor folder. So I'm going to add a folder, and I have to name it editor. That's what Unity states. And then inside that folder, I'm going to make a script, an editor script for this checkpoint connector script. So since the editor script will be for that, I'll create a C# script. I'll call it checkpoint connector editor, the name, so I know which script it's for. So now I'm opening up the editor script for my checkpoint connector script. Okay, and here in Unity, by default, it opens up as a mono behavior, a regular script class. That's fine. So I'm going to have to add a using statement for Unity editor, since I'm going to make this editor script. And then I'm also have to change the script to an editor to run off of editor instead of mono behavior. And break that. And these functions don't exist for the editor class. So what do I do now is I have to tell the script who it's going to be an editor for actually. Okay, so the first thing I'll do here here in the declaration, I will say this is a custom editor, and it's for the type of, yeah, that's right, checkpoint connector. See, and it shows up in the IntelliSense, checkpoint connector. There, that says that this script is going to work with my checkpoint connector script. Okay, now inside, I'm going to override one function, public, what is it, override, and void on inspector GUI. There we go, on inspector GUI, pick that one. Bam. All right, so this on inspector GUI event from the editor class, it's going to happen every time this inspector window draws. So here I have to let it draw the normal stuff that it would draw. I just call the base on inspector GUI, and that would mean whatever editor on inspector GUI would normally do, just call and do that. And now I'll add my extra stuff in. I need a reference to the script, so that would be my checkpoint connector script equals, I'm just going to typecast the target because this is a special variable target, which the uninspector GUI knows, and target equals the script that this is running for. All I have to do though is typecast it to a checkpoint connector script, so I could use the functions in there in my checkpoint connector script over here. Let's make the button a different color. That we're gonna draw a button to press on here. So the GUI, I'm gonna set the background color of our special button equal to color yellow. That way we know it's our button. It's not like one of the Unity's regular buttons. And then I'm gonna add a button. So if GUI layout dot button, this function will add a button and also check to see if we pressed it. And the text that'll be on the button is angle checkpoint walls. If this button is pressed, if this button equals true, then do this. Call our script, the parent script, which is checkpoint connector script, dot angle checkpoint walls. There's the function we made to angle the walls. So we should just call that and do that. Anything else we want to show in the inspector extra? Maybe we'll show how many checkpoints we have. GUI, layout, and what I want to add is a label to show a label. And I guess whatever I want to show, I'm going to have to ask the parent script about what I want to show. So I'll call a function called editor label text, which I'm going to make in just a minute. Okay. So angle checkpoint walls, we already made that function. Editor label script, we have to make it. So here's a little trick. Angle checkpoint walls, I'm going to click on it, right click, and say go to definition, and it brings us to angle checkpoint walls. Good, we're in our script. Now over here, I just want to add in this new one, editor label text that I said. So it has to be public, so it can be called from outside the script. And editor label text, just some text to show. So what are we going to show? How many checkpoints we have? So I will string s1. Just return a string. Return checkpoint total equals, and now I'm going to get the count. This dot transform dot child count. And that's a number, but I'm returning I want to return a string, so I'll say toString. And yes, I got it. Public void, public string is what I want to return. So editor label text will return a string that says checkpoints total equals all the childs, how many children we have, and convert that number 32, 77, convert it to a string instead of a number. Okay, so that is there. Save that. This is here. Save this. And everything is saved. Go back over here. Script is processing. So first thing I should get is a problem. So let me just try saving my scene and saving my project. I forget what happens. Like sometimes when I first add, there we go. So I just refreshed. Oh, see now, checkpoints. What I did was I clicked off and then clicked back on my element. So here's the checkpoints parent object, and it has the checkpoint connector script where we say what the size of the walls we want will be. And here's the new button in yellow, angle checkpoint walls, and that's what I coded right here in my editor script, this button. Okay, and then also I coded to have a label to say how many checkpoints there are, and it says we have 54 of them. 0 to 53. Good, that's 54. So will this work? When I press this button, angle checkpoint walls, then it should call angle checkpoint walls in my checkpoint connector script, which is going to go through every one of the children and take one child and point it to the child in front. One child and point it to the child in front. And I think I'm missing something because this is going to stop at the almost the last child. So at the last child, I have to get the I have to get it again. Int idx last equals this dot transform dot child count minus one. And then I have to do the current, which will be this dot transform dot, well, let's say what current equals. Let me put these variables out here since I'm using them in more than one place. Bink, bink. And transform next. Bink, bink. Okay. And that means I don't declare them inside the loop. Okay. So now over here, I could say that current equals this dot transform dot get child at idx last, and then next will be this dot transform dot get child at 0, and then I just have to make current dot look at next, and I also have to make current dot local scale equal the wall size. Boom, boom, boom. All right, good. That works. Let me save that and go in here and let's try the button. So let's take a look here at the walls. This over. Let you get there like that. And let's press this button. Bam. And there we go. Now the walls are all angled for me. I don't have to do anything. And this over here controls the size of the walls. Like I said, if I said a 5 and the walls are short, but I'm pretty sure the cars are going to be able to pass there without hitting the walls. We want to make the walls big enough so as the cars driving around the track that they all have a chance to hit a wall, especially the AI cars. So let's see if I put them at 20. That covers everything. That's pretty good. So I'll leave them at 20. So now I have a track, and I don't have the AI cars yet, but I have the path for the AI cars to follow. So let's save what we got. That's our job for today, to make a checkpoint wall.